Okay, Graham Ellis from Ellis Transport Service. It's a question for Vasilis. It's interesting. You're working in partnership with Intrasoft, but I am well aware there are at least 4 commercial load matching services available throughout Europe. Did you not look at those to see if they would fit within the project? Because there's existing track record with people using those services rather than trying to develop something new.
Yes, thank you very much for your question. Yes, indeed, we have made a thorough literature review. It is true that there are a lot of platforms. We have also identified some of them that they are actually operating in Greece, so locally. Platforms that they provide not only urban freight services, but also matching between other type of transport like national or international transport. However, what is important is in our platform that there is a total different way of doing the matches. Usually, what we have seen is that in most of the platforms, there is this bidding case. In our case, we have the stable matching idea, where, as already Eleni said, it's a bit different from how typical platforms are working. So in a stable matching platform, we have this fairness. We have a way that all operators will take specific loads and also in specific amount of money, and this will be made in a systemic manner and in a fairness manner. So I can say, although we haven't developed the platform, so I don't have a lot of information about stable matching to tell you, but still I can tell you that based on the review, we have a very significant difference, and this is the stable matching. If you wish, we can give you some further information if you give us your email and give you some part of the deliverable. Thank you.
Yeah. Because actually, one of the innovation of this platform is what Vasilis mentioned before, but actually, we are not only working on innovation, on technology. Technology need also to be adopted by the local companies. So one of the innovation of this platform is that developed with the other, with the 3PL company. We formulate the requirements and even the interface by taking into account the day-to-day businesses. Because what happened with the other platforms that have been used, some others have been used and applied in Europe, but in Greece, the other commercial platforms have not been used because they didn't take into account what the local market requires. I think this is the main difference with the rest.
Hi, Tom Cherrett from Southampton University. Question for Eleni, just about following up on that. In terms of the load matching, to what extent do you have restrictions in terms of the compatibility of different consignors loads and things like time restriction windows? Does that limit the scope for load sharing? And what types of commodity were you really looking at? Was it all palletized? I'm just thinking of what are the kind of natural restrictions, and did you find certain consignors, just because of the practice of their operation, it would be very hard to get a regular load share with others?
The approach and the algorithm by itself has not this kind, that many restrictions. You can parameterize based on your needs. This restriction mainly came out from the companies. Companies prefer usually to have pallets or in order to express their loads in a standard way. At the beginning, when the working group was larger, there are people that focus on the exceptions. But it came out that the people that end up to work together and test the pilot didn't want to focus that much on the exceptions of the distribution. They wanted to find a way to standardize a bit the main volume of their distribution and find a solution on that. Otherwise, you will have only restrictions and non-solution will work out in the actual environment. So.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I would like to add a few things on that. As already Eleni said, we took into consideration various constraints. An important constraint, for instance, is the type of load. What is important is that we had third-party logistics companies that they provide services for different depositors. So we have products which are, for instance, ambient, chilled, refrigerated, and so forth. So this is very important because what we have decided there to do is to focus on ambient, mainly products. And also another important thing is the type of product. So you cannot mix, and we didn't mix chemical, for instance, and hazmat products with food. So again, this is another important issue. So yes, we took that into consideration. It's not very easy, of course, to do that. And also we take into consideration some other constraints, like, for instance, delivery windows, which is also very important. Last but not least, we didn't take into consideration a lot B2C, I mean deliveries to home. We tried to focus on B2B cases, deliveries in supermarkets or in retail stores, so as to focus mainly on pallet or on cartons and boxes, not on items, because a totally different way of providing such a service. So it is true, and we took that into consideration. Thank you.
Another question?
Hi, it's again a question to Eleni and you. What we've seen in many of the examples where there were platforms, one of the biggest obstacles is also the transactional cost. Because if I have a pallet, you transport it, we need to send invoices. And to make an invoice will cost you 25 euros. To pay the invoice, check it as 25 euros. You need systems integration because you cannot handle an invoice if you don't have a purchase order. How did you deal with all those things like transactional costs, people taking time, people communicating?
This is actually the next step on this process to quantify the extra cost of this, and is actually one of the challenges that I mentioned at the end, this day-to-day implementation. The first step was to check the proof of concept and if there are synergies on that. I think that in a smaller scale of 2 or 3 involved stakeholders, it could have a more rationalized cost and if you take into account the benefits. Yeah.
And just to add a few things about that, it is true that it's a very important issue how you can do the invoicing and all the other things that you already mentioned correctly. What we have seen is that we have actually 3 or 4 3PL companies that they have already e-invoicing, and also they have the same WMS system. So having the same warehouse management system and also invoicing could work very well in having the necessary bridges to do that. In most of the cases, and what we're trying to do is to make it all this electronically, so as to minimize the cost of having printed invoices and so forth.
And the last question for Giacomo.
Hello. I have a question for both Jacques and Sarah, because we are working a lot on electrification of vehicles. So I saw in Jacques' presentation that new cargo installed 63, I think, new charging points. And I wanted to know if they are fast or normal, and how you managed to lower the price so much. And also for Sarah, how, since you provided all this scheme for less pollutant vehicles, if CD is also planning to provide infrastructure in this sense. Thank you.
Yeah, so 63 chargers, there were 2 computers, and each computer would be capable of organizing the loading, either fast or slow charging for each vehicle, for 32 different charging points. So this was reducing the cost a lot, because in the previous version, the charging points were having each an individual computer to manage the electricity supply to each battery. So now by centralizing the computer capabilities, and the system price go down massively. Yes, that was your question.
Okay, in the last phases of the Turing pilot, some express courier ask for the permit for an electric vehicle. Now I think 5 or 6 vehicles are fully electric and runs in the city center with a permit. The city of Turin has already implemented a good infrastructure for electric vehicles, also for private cars. But I think that the next step is to install a fast charger infrastructure, probably starting from the depots of these express operators, in order to have as much as possible electric vehicle running in the city center. I think this is the target for the city, to achieve a high number of electric vehicles in the city centers, also for the city logistics.
Thank you. It's time now for the break. So thank you to all the speakers, and invite you to go downstairs to take some fresh air and some refreshments. Thank you.